What's going on, everybody? And welcome to Brutal Planet Comics. I'm your host, Dre the Brute Daniels, and welcome to another episode of the Indie Corner, where I sit down with everybody from the independence community, writers, artists, directors, producers, doesn't matter if you're in the game. I want to talk to you. So today we have ourselves a very, very special guest. He is the co-founder and editor-in-chief of Legacy Comics, the man of 1,000 voices. Give it up, everybody, for Patrick Hickey Jr.
What's up, man? How you doing? Happy to be here.
No, man, I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. Means a lot.
Oh, Patrick, it's an absolute, genuine pleasure to have you on. How are you doing, my friend?
I am exhausted. I feel so beat up. I feel like one of the extras in like a Jackie Chan movie right now. I feel like I have been kicked in so many different places. I don't even know what time it is, but I am super happy to be here and to make the most of our time together.
Absolutely, and I am so happy that you drug your very, very beat up extra self all up in here to come and spend some time with me. It's an absolute, genuine pleasure to have you. So before we even jump into all the great work and all your journeys and all that wonderful stuff, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for just making the time to come and speak with me today.
No problem, man.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine. The pleasure is mine. So, before we get into all the cool stuff that you're doing over there at Legacy Comics, let's just get to know you a little bit, Patrick. Where you're from? How in the world did we get here?
Oof, it's a really long story. So my name is Patrick Hickey Jr. I am, like you said, the editor-in-chief of Legacy Comics and the co-founder of Legacy Comics. I'm also the founder and owner of ReviewFix.com. I'm also a staff writer at Old School Gamer magazine. I'm also the author of the Minds Behind the Games book series. I'm also a voice actor for several indie video game companies. Journey started, I'm 38, so it probably started about 30 years ago when I just got into comics and video games and professional wrestling, and my parents used to tell me all the time, if you love all of that stuff, you'll never make any money doing it. It's just a waste of time. And now I make money doing and following all of that stuff. I write about professional wrestling. I have my own comic book brand. I have my own entertainment critique website. I do voice acting for video games. I write books about video game history. I've done ring announcing for, professional wrestling events.
Awesome.
So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, all of that stuff that people told me was just for shits and giggles. I found a way to do it and to have fun with it. I also was an editor at NBC for 2.5 years. I covered 2 seasons of Saturday Night Live, 3 Super Bowls, 2 Olympics. So I've been a college professor for 16 years. I'm the director of the journalism program at Kingsborough Community College. I'm the chairperson of the CUNY Journalism Discipline Council. So that's the City University of New York. So yeah, I've been around. I've done a lot of cool things. But bottom line is I'm just like this geek. I'm really just a geek that loves pop culture, loves history, and I've just found ways to make a living writing about the things that I love. So
wow,
so that's kind of like my journey.
My goodness. So not only are you a man of 1,000 voices, a man of 1,000 hats. My goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
What haven't you done? My God,
it's pretty crazy.
Wow,
it's pretty wild.
Wow. So I gotta pick through that story just a touch because I've got to know. So like me, I pretty much like you. I grew up with a whole bunch of fandom, comics, cartoons, pro wrestling, all that great stuff. So everything you're speaking, you're preaching to the choir. So I've got to pick here and there. Oh, Bullet Club, I'm with it. I see you just a touch. I'm with it. So
I got to ask you though, before we continue, are you up high or are you down low? Are you following the current storyline? Are you at Jay White or are you at Tamatonga? That's a very important question.
So right now, I'm Jay White.
Okay,
I'm Jay White.
So this interview
we can continue.
So
Awesome.
Yeah.
So let's pick just a touch of your story before I get into all the cool geek stuff because I can't wait. Let's talk about you being a professor for so many years. So how did you end up choosing? Well, journalism one is, first of all, I wish that I went and did that when I was young and going to school for journalism and all that stuff and become a professor. So how did you end up becoming a professor of journalism?
So I went to It's so funny. The college that I've taught at for the past 16 years, I went there like 24 years ago, 22 years ago, you know? And what happened was while I was working there, I got a job as a tutor.
Okay.
So as I was going for my bachelor's degree at another college, I kept working there. So then when I got my bachelor's degree, I applied to become a part-time professor. I got that job. So I was working there for like 2 years, and then I went for my graduate degree, my master's degree, and I continued working there. And then after my master's, I continued to like teach on the weekends and work at NBC. And then I got to this crazy point where it was like NBC offered me a full-time editorial job.
Oh, wow.
And then Kingsborough offered me a full-time teaching position. So I had to make a decision. At that point, I had already owned my own entertainment website, reviewfix.com, for like 3 or 4 years. So I'm like, if I leave NBC, I can still write. I have my own site. I had like 25 people writing for me. I still have about a dozen people writing for me. So I'm just like, oh, it's gonna suck leaving NBC, but I wanted to get married. I wanted to have kids, and I was just like, teaching would be a better way for me to support my family and for me to be able to spend more time, because it was like NBC was fantastic, but they took a ton of time from you. So I had to make a decision whether, but in the meantime, I still continue writing for newspapers, for magazines and stuff like that. Like I've had photos published in the New York Times. I've had articles published in the Daily News, the New York Daily News and stuff like that. So it's just like, I've never stopped writing. I just left NBC and they were great. I love being there, but like teaching is a great way of giving back, of sharing what you know. It's a great way to support a family. And it's also like a full-time teaching week is like 4 days. So then I have two kids. So the rest of the time I could spend at home with my family and stuff like that. So journalism is very much like you're always on the clock. So I had to make a decision. I still do a ton of journalism, but my full-time job is a college professor. So I got lucky in the fact that like I got a tutoring position, and then that bled into a part-time teaching position, and then I just stayed there and kept doing good work, and I kept doing things. So I became like a really attractive full-time prospect, because I had covered like the Sundance Film Festival. I covered like I covered Comic-Con every year. I interviewed like Philip Seymour Hoffman. I interviewed like all these cool people, and I was teaching journalism, and I was young, so they were like, yeah, this is somebody that we can build with, and it's been a lot of fun. So.
Sweet, that's awesome, bro. That's awesome, and I love how you, despite all the other aspirations and dreams and stuff that you had, you kept things in perspective on the long game. Because many of us that grew up and like, oh, I want to do this and the other, and then we lose track of, hey, do need a steady income. I do need a roof over my head, but you were able to still put that in perspective. That's really, well, first of all, God knows that's important, because we all end up making, all should be making those decisions for the long game. So thank you for sharing that with us.
No problem.
So let me ask you, so how'd you get into the voice acting? So we know you've been teaching forever and a day. So how'd you get into the voice work?
It's so funny. So I wrote my first book, The Minds Behind the Games, interviews with cult and classic video game developers. And this was like in 2017. And it's 36 interviews with game developers. So we're talking like, in that book, Deus Ex, Doom, Spider-Man, Yar's Revenge, E.T., like there's 36 awesome games, 36 awesome interviews. I finished that, and then I didn't know if I was going to do a sequel. Now I'm on book 7, but I didn't know if I was going to do a sequel or not. So I went back to doing what I usually do at ReviewFix, which is interview independent video game developers. I love being the first journalist to interview the game developer. I love being the first person to get my hands on a game. I love to do that with musicians. I love to do it with comic book writers too, but like with video games, it's so different. So I found this game on Twitter called The Padre, and it kind of reminded me of like the original Resident Evil mixed with like Minecraft.
Sweet. Like
the visuals. And I messaged them on Twitter, and I was like, let's do an interview. So we do an interview, like a Q&A through email, because they were from Bulgaria and their English wasn't that good and stuff like that. So I had to edit the crap out of the interview. I'll never forget it. But it got really good traffic. And then after, they're like, do you want to play a beta? And I'm like, sure. So as soon as I start playing the game, I notice that there's grammatical issues with the script. So they had very light voice acting because the voice actor hadn't done like all of the lines yet. But it's like the cutscenes all had like dialogue that would come in, you know, and it was like filled with grammatical mistakes. So I'm an English and a journalism professor, so I was like, yo, listen, if you want your game to be taken seriously, you need somebody to go through this script and just clean it up. And they were like, well, would you want to do it? And I'm like, well, like me? And they're like, yeah, you. So we came up with a price, and I did it. And they paid me like the same day, and they're like, oh, update your Steam. So I update Steam, and as soon as I fire up the game, I see all of my changes are in there. And I'm just like, and I'm like, so I'm going to be credited as like, you know, like script editor, dialogue editor. And they're like, yeah. So then like a week later, I thought I was done. So then like a week later, they're like, they send me more. And I'm like, oh, there's more? And they're like, yeah, we're going to do this on the regular, you know? So then couple weeks go by, and I'm talking to them every day now. This is like fun for me, you know, making good money on the side and stuff. And then they're like, listen, we have an important job for you. I'm like, okay. They're like, we're going to Kickstarter, so we want you to edit the entire Kickstarter campaign, the English and stuff. And I'm just like, man, okay. So then, like right before the Kickstarter is about to launch, they're like, we have a problem. And I'm like, what's the matter? And they're like, the voice actor left, the main voice actor. They're like, we don't know what's going to happen. And I'm like, well, to be totally honest, he's not that good. You could do better. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, the game is supposed to be scary. It's supposed to be about a Catholic priest that is looking for like his mentor, like another member of the clergy. And he gets led to like this mansion in like the bayou. And there's like swarms of zombies and stuff. It's really cool. It reminds me of the original Maniac Mansion and like... what's it called? What's the other one? Not Silent Hill. It's a point and click game. It'll come to me.
I was about to show. I was about to say
Alone in the Dark.
Alone in the Dark. Ah, yes, yeah.
So it's like Maniac Mansion with some Alone in the Dark and some Resident Evil all in there and stuff like that. And I'm like, your main character sounds like Russell Brand. It's like, you know, I'm just walking around this world, you know, and I'm just, it's not scary. It's not doing it for me. So they're like, do you know anybody? Because, you know, like I've interviewed tons of people, you know, and I was like, I could do it. And they're like, well, audition. So it's just like I go in my man cave and I pull up, you know, my computer and stuff, and I'm just like, what am I gonna do? So I've always been good at that Don LaFontaine deep baritone movie voice.
Yeah. Like, in a world, one man, one tortilla, rated PG-13.
You know. And I'm like, I can't do that because that people would just laugh their ass off the game. It would be good for a trailer, but it wouldn't be good for the whole game. So I'm like, so what if they want like an English guy? So what if I add some English to that, you know?
So then I came across this dark English voice. Hello, my name is Alexander, and I am the Padre.
You know, and I sent it to them. And, oh man, my throat was like on fire. Just to find that. Now I could do it with no problem, you know, but like to find it. So I sent them like a bunch of clips and they're like, can you record everything? Like 2,000 lines, like today. And I'm like, all right. And I sent it to them and they're like, update your Steam. And it was in there. And I was just like, wow, I'm the main character in a video game. So then we didn't get funded in Kickstarter, which sucked. But what happened was we ended up getting signed after. Because like we had, because we were an indie company, Shotgun with Glitters, and what ended up happening was Feardemic signed us and they published the first 2 games. So it ended up working out great, you know?
Wow.
And Feardemic, the guy that's like running Feardemic now used to be at Namco for a really long time.
Oh, wow.
So it's like it worked. Yeah, so it worked out good, you know, the way it worked out. So I those were the first 2 games that I that's the thing. How many people their entrance into video games is starring in 2 games. So then after that, I've done a ton of like Kickstarter videos for video games. I'm working very closely. I can't say what games right now, but with Mega Cat Studios, I'm doing a whole bunch of work with them. I'm working with Tony Barnes right now at Retro Ninja.
Cool.
Tony Barnes is one of the guys that like we're talking Desert Strike, Jungle Strike, Urban Strike, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Star Wars Episode 3, Strider. Like he's a rock star. So like I'm helping him out with voice on a couple of his games right now. So it's just like it manifested from just me opening my mouth and saying, I could do this, to, you know, I have people reach out to me now like, oh, could you do this? Or like, oh, we played the Padre, could you do something like this? Or, you know, a lot of the places where I've been successful is like Kickstarter trailers, YouTube trailers and stuff like that. But like, yeah, so by the end of this year, beginning of next year, I'll probably have like 12 roles completed in game. So it's just like, I could have totally been like a one-hit wonder, but it's like manifested into something that I've gotten like pretty good at and I've had a lot of fun with. And then the thing is too, they get like the total package, because it's like I've interviewed hundreds of video game developers. I've done bug testing on several games. So it's just like, when I do voice acting, I'm like, send me a beta, let me play it, and I'll give them feedback. And then like, I'll look at their marketing campaign. If like I see like things that are going on with like their development cycle, I'm like, yo, listen, the guy that did X-Men Legends, or oh, the guy that did Maximum Carnage, or oh, the guy that did this, they went through the same thing and this is what happened for them. So it's just like, I feel like a lot of the developers that I work with, they're used to like finding voice actors on like Fiverr, or something like that, and it's just they get the voice and then that's it. When they get me, they get somebody that has a good following on Instagram, a good following on Facebook, and somebody that like really supports the project. So I feel like that they really appreciate that more. And it's built a lot of goodwill for me. So it's helped me with my books. It's helped me with so many things. So it's like, I've loved the run that I've had in voice acting. It's been so much fun.
Good God. Yeah. Me just sitting here listening to it, I'm having a good time. Wow. Yeah. That is a heck of a journey, bro. That's awesome. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to have to stitch myself hand to hand with you, because you're dripping with success and I got to be drug along for the ride. That's awesome.
Man. I'm trying. Oh, every day.
That is really cool. Wow. That's dope, man. That's dope. My goodness. Okay. Dang, I forgot what my next question was, man, but that's really cool. Wow. That is awesome. Yeah, man. That's really awesome. Okay. Yes. Last thing on the docket before we jump into all that work you're doing. How'd you get into the wrestling commentating?
Oh, that was so much fun. So I've been writing about professional wrestling for probably about 18 years. I've interviewed Harley Race. I've interviewed Diamond Dallas Page. I've interviewed Paul Heyman. I've interviewed Rey Mysterio. I've interviewed Chavo Guerrero. I've interviewed Loki. I've interviewed Shark Boy. I mean, I've interviewed so many professional wrestlers.
Wow.
And then what happened was, it's serendipitous sometimes how stuff happens. I reconnected with an old friend from high school, Joakim Morales, and he is the owner of Battle Club Pro in Brooklyn. And I mean, he's had EC3, Drew McIntyre, Pete Dunne. He's had so many people come through, Deonna Purrazzo, Tasha Steeles. He's had so many great people come through his promotion. And we would discuss storylines from time to time just for fun, because I'm his friend. And then it would be like, well, you want to come by and review the show? And I would go, sure. And I would sit at the commentary table and I would write up my review of the show. And before the show, I would interview, you know, wrestlers and stuff. Like, he had the Kingdom there one time. He had Trent Seven there one time. He had Ted DiBiase there one time. So it's like, I would rack up interviews. So it was like a beneficial situation. My site gets good traffic. He needed someone to review the show, to get him some, you know, publicity. And then it just got to the point where it was just like, I told him, because I was doing all the voice acting for video games. And I was like, dude, I would love to do like ring announcing. And he was just like, you want to do the main event at the next show? And I was like, sure. So I wore a suit and I came out to the Final Fantasy VII boss music. and they announced me. And I went in the ring and I was just like, the next match is set for one fall. And like, it was, I mean, I had to memorize it and stuff. And it was for like their world title, you know, the main event for their world title and stuff. And it was like a super prestigious moment. So that was awesome.
That's, you know, amazing.
And then the thing is now too, without giving anything away, video game developers saw my ring announcing, and let's just say it's not the end of my ring announcing, but it will be in a different venue, if you know what I'm saying. So it's opened up some doors. So I've loved professional wrestling for a really long time. My master's thesis was on professional wrestling.
Sweet.
I went to Johnny Rods's training school. Johnny Rod's is like one of the biggest trainers of all time. We're talking like not Killian Dane, Karrion Cross, Killer Cross, whatever you want to call him, the Dudley Boys, like Damien Demento, Morrissey. Like he's trained some of like the best wrestlers in wrestling history. And I went there and I was like, let's talk. And we did this like 6-hour sit down interview, and then I hung out in the gym with the boys for like a week and, you know, watched them do their thing. And I got some great, you know, background and stuff. And I wrote the story of how somebody could go from this kid watching TV, watching WWF superstars on a Saturday afternoon, or watching, you know, WCW Saturday night in Georgia or whatever, and how they go from that to being a professional wrestler. So it turned out to be a lot of fun. And whenever I pitch a wrestler and I'm like, I want to interview you, they always ask, well, what have you written? Because everyone writes reviews of like Raw and Dynamite now. Like there's no skill in that, you know? And then I go, and I show them this, and it's like this 6,000 word like love letter to like wrestling, told from the point of view of all of these wrestlers, you know, from Low Key, Diamond Dallas Page, Harley Race, you know, George Santee, like all of these like indie guys, all of these pro guys. So it's just like that's helped me really
like a credibility
stories that I've get the stories I want in professional wrestling. So that's like another part of my
that is, you know, amazing. Wow. Good God, your life is a movie, bruh. That's crazy.
It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah, that is awesome. And somehow, some way, you find a way to somehow sleep from time to time. Unbelievable.
I wish. I don't get to sleep at all. I have 2 kids that like Saturday and Sunday they're still up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know. And it's not. I have not slept past like 9 o'clock in like 6 years.
That sounds right. That sounds right. Wow,
that's my children,
bro. That is amazing. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Like I gotta rub off your shoulder and get some of that pixie dust that you got on there. Yeah. Give me a little bit of that. Give me a little bit of that.
Take it.
That's crazy. That's crazy. But wow, bro, heck of a journey. A journey.
Oh yeah.
So this leads us all to Legacy Comics. So what are you guys cooking up over there? What are you working on right now? Like, what's your main story arcs? What are you guys working on now? Because God knows how you found the time, but I got to know how are we doing at Legacy right now?
Okay, so I'll give you the origin story of Legacy before I jump into that. So what happened was I wrote Condry when I was 18.
Okay.
I wrote Condry before I was a journalist on like my first laptop my first computer that I ever bought. You know, and it's just a story of a homeless guy that was like a victim of the New York City foster care system, and his dad was like this great cop that had been killed by this gang that runs New York City. Very Frank Miller, you know, very Brian Michael Bendis, Sam Twitch style, like very noir, very gritty. The Brooklyn that I remember in the late 80s, early 90s with drugs and prostitution and stuff like that, you know, just like really hard to the core, like old school Spawn, old school Daredevil, like, you know, and I wrote it. Could never find an artist that could like do it right. So we're talking, I went to college, tried to find an artist, went through like 2, graduated from college, started teaching, went through like another 2 artists. And then what happened was I published my first like 2 or 3 books, and I'm like still sitting on this script that I have so much like love for, and like 4 or 5 people read it and they're like, this is really good. And I'm like, I was thinking, maybe do I turn it into a book series? You know, I'm like, no, it's a comic. This is a comic. And then I came across one day, I went to a party and my friend Tommy introduced me to Kieran Quinn.
Okay.
And I sent him my script, and we did like a little 6-page ashcan that we pitched to like Dark Horse, Image, a whole bunch of places, and then COVID hits.
Of course.
So none of these places are like accepting any type of, you know, pitches or anything like that. And then what happened was Mark Burnell from Lesser Known Comics messages me on Instagram one day, and he's just like, oh, would you be interested in interviewing me for your site, for reviewfix.com? And I go there, and they only have like 200 followers, and they have no comics out. They're like, this, literally, they have not even started yet. So naturally I say yes. And the article gets really good traffic. And after it's over, he goes, if there's ever anything that I could do for you, let me know. So I was like, yeah, no problem. Close the chat on Instagram, and then light bulb. And I'm like, I'm sitting on a finished 6-page ash can with great art, the whole 9 yards. So then I'm like, Mark, do me a favor, take a look at this. Let me know what you think. Like 20 minutes later, he's like, yeah, we want to sign you guys. And we're going to re-letter the book. We're going to hire like a professional letterer to letter it and stuff like that. And And this was February of last year.
Okay.
So now it's like, oh my God, this story that I was sitting on for like 19 years, 18 years, it's finally coming to fruition. This is great.
That's always a great feeling.
There was times in my life where I felt like I'm going to die before this comic ever comes out. This comic may never see the light of day. And, you know, I was happy because, like I said, I have books in all four of my books are in Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA, UC Berkeley, like hundreds of libraries. So it's just like video game history, journalism, I'm totally respected. Nonfiction, if you Google my name, my picture comes up, Patrick Hickey Jr., author. But my whole thing is, it's just like, I don't ever want to be pigeonholed as just a voice actor or just a nonfiction writer or just a professor or just so I'm just like, this was the first thing that I ever wrote that I really like gave a shit about. I need to finish this. I need to see it through. So then like when it came out, I was like, so then we didn't know what was going to happen. And what happened was, I mean, people loved it. And then it was just like, we ended up doing Condry 1 and 2 also with Lesser Known. And Lesser Known was great. He paid us a salary, you know, it was great, you know, and I felt like I was under the learning tree. This is a guy that just started a company on his own dime, and I was watching him, and I would attend all the staff meetings, and I would voice my concerns and voice my opinions and stuff like that. And then it's just like my wife says all the time, she's like, listen, you're only happy when you're the boss. Like you need to be the boss. And then it's like the longer that I stayed at Lesser Known, I was just like, I wouldn't do it this way. I wouldn't do that this way. I wouldn't do that this way. And then one of my buddies lives like a couple blocks away from me. His name is John Svedesi, and he's the co-founder of Legacy Comics. And I would vent to him. And in the meantime, I had gotten John some cover art work for Lesser Known. I got him a cover gig at Old School Gamer magazine. So I was like helping build his credibility. And I was like, dude, what if we start our own comic book company? You know? And this was like in July. And we would just sit down, and we sat down for like a month and a half, and we discussed a business plan and things like that. And the end of August, we filed the LLC. And then there was like, I promised Lesser Known that I was going to do a Halloween issue of Condry, and that was going to be Condry 3. So that came out, and then like November 1st, the day after Halloween, I called up Mark, and I'm like, I'm done. Thank you. You know, like, thank you for everything. And the next day I announced Legacy Comics, and 3 days later we started our Kickstarter.
Wow.
And within 4 hours, our Kickstarter was completely funded.
That's tremendous. Wow.
And it was just like, we used Condry as like the main selling point, but we had 3 other books. And then we announced another book in the middle of the Kickstarter. And then we announced 2 one-shots connected to Condry after that. So it's just like, a lot of people have come to me and they're like, you have huge balls. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And they're like, you started a company like on a whim. You did a Kickstarter on a whim. Like, you had no followers on Instagram, Facebook, the whole 9 yards. And I was just like, the company had no followers on Instagram or Facebook, but I had followers on Instagram and Facebook. My writers and my artists had followers on Instagram, and you know, so it's just like we planned the hell out of this for like 3 months. Big time. No one saw that, you know. So they just saw like this brand new thing. And then like we ended up getting some newspaper coverage. We got some TV coverage. And I mean, I was just busting my ass doing all this press stuff, trying to get us on as many podcasts. I mean, I must have we did a 60-day Kickstarter, and I probably did 30 podcasts in 60 days.
Oh, wow.
You know, and when it was all over, we were 300% funded.
Oh my goodness.
You know, and that basically paid for our entire first print run, which we're finishing now. And it's really helping us with the next print run that we're working on as we speak too. So it's just like, Lesser Known I'll never forget Lesser Known, because they gave me the opportunity that maybe Image and Dark Horse wouldn't have given me. But now it's like, I'm more in control, and a lot of the things that I saw at Lesser Known that I wasn't a fan of, those won't happen here, and I feel like I have a great team, and we're really hyped. So that's like the origin story of Legacy. But we have 5 books now.
Okay.
And then we have two one-shots. So I'll run through all 5 books for you if you want me to. Okay, so the first one, obviously, like I said, is Condry, and it's about a homeless vigilante in New York City that is hunting the men responsible for his father's death. And it's basically, he's in a fight against the most powerful gang in New York City, and they have their hooks like in every single facet of New York City. So like politics, police, the whole 9 yards. So it's just like, if you can put like Sons of Anarchy, Highlander, Spawn, and like old school Daredevil and like Punisher all in a blender, that's Condry. That's Condry. You know, so that's like my baby. Then we have Athos, which is our only superhero book. Everything else is like very gritty and stuff. Athos is like, it's about a superhero that was essentially assigned the role as like protector of Earth.
Okay.
From this ancient civilization, so like thousands of years. And, you know, he's kind of like the Watcher. You know, like he just watches and just chills out. You know, and what ends up happening is he ends up being put in a stasis for thousands of years. And his job thousands of years before was to protect the Earth against like superhumans, because there was none, you know. So whenever like a superhuman or a mutant, he would like basically extinguish them and keep like people as safe as possible. When he comes out of his stasis, he finds that like the entire planet is made up of mutants, and he's basically the villain, you know. So it's a pretty wild story. It's got great art. We ended up getting LeBeau Underwood to do the inks on the cover, and he's from Marvel and DC. He's doing the new Patch comic, the Wolverine Patch comic. So we got him to do the inks on the cover, so that was like super awesome that we were able to get him. So that's our second book. And John Svedesi, our co-founder, is writing and drawing that. So I told you before that Kieran Quinn does the art for Condry, but Kieran Quinn also does the art for my other book. Well, I have 3 books, but for the second book called The Job. And the Job is about a man that is a superintendent of a building in Brooklyn by day, but he's a professional wrestler at night. And he's a jobber. He loses every match. And everyone just, they don't get it. They don't understand why he goes out there and gets his ass kicked every night for like $50 a night. And then there's another side of it, because he's got like the best gear and he's got the hottest valet, and people are like, how do you afford like to have the best in-ring gear, and like how did you get a woman like that? And his car outside is beautiful. And when they ask him, he's just like, oh, I've been lucky. But the bottom line is he robs banks. And his wife is his valet, and she's his getaway driver. And it's a ton of fun.
I like it.
So it's like, if you like wrestling and you like films like Point Break and like French Connection and Dog Day Afternoon, it's very Tarantino-esque. So the cool part is our friend Dan, the main character, whenever he robs a bank, he wears a different lucha mask. So it's just like, he'll go in there with a lucha mask on, and the thing is, there's so many odes to professional wrestling in there. It's like he might have Tiger Mask on one time, and then La Parka the next, or whatever, Rey Mysterio another, you know. And it's a really fun, it's going to be a 6-issue miniseries, but it's in the same universe as Condry. So these characters are definitely going to show up in Condry at some point, so that's a lot of fun. The 4th book is called Kroom, Kroom, and the way that this started off was I wrote the story for this video game called Kroom, and the animator on this game was Pete Paquette. And if you know like your names behind, like Pete Paquette was the lead animator on BioShock Infinite. And he's been a keyframe animator on Overwatch on and off for years. Super talented guy. It's basically like if you can combine Strider, Akari Warriors, and Legend of Zelda. That's basically what
That's a
Cream
heck of a
is.
mashup.
So it's just like, imagine the dungeon exploring of Zelda, but imagine if Link not only had that Master Sword,
Mhm.
but he had a gun too.
Okay.
So like that's how the game played, and it was basically about like this robot that was like designed by the scientist, and his job was to save the planet from this invading alien force. Very old school 80s video game homage, you know?
All right.
But COVID killed this video game for the time being. But the story was written. I had written the story. So I went to Pete and I was like, listen, I don't want to sit on this story. I don't know when we're going to get back to developing this game. What if we turned it into a comic book? The game is 6 levels. So what if we make it a 6-issue miniseries?
Can't get no better than that.
And we end every issue in a boss fight. And he's like, yo, that actually might work. So that's Kroom. So the thing is, if you like Mega Man, if you like RoboCop, if you like games like what's the one, the guy that did Towerfall, Celeste. If you like Celeste,
Okay.
the story of Celeste, how it just like pulls on your heartstrings and stuff. There's a lot of that going on. I'm super proud of this story.
Wow.
So that's our 4th book.
Okay.
Our 5th book is called The Legend of the Night Owl, and it's written by Afram Jambalai. He's an old high school friend of mine. He is a stuntman. He's been on Law and Order. He's been on Luke Cage. He's been on Daredevil. He's like me. He's like this man of many faces and stuff like that. He's super talented. It's like if you combine, you mentioned Streets of Rage before we started recording. If you combine Streets of Rage and The Warriors, and you made it a comic book, it would be The Legend of the Night Owl. If you like the art that I sent you in PM from Kieran, he's the artist on Legend of the Night Owl. So it's like Condry, The Job, and Legend of the Night Owl all have this very late 80s DC, early 90s image, dark, strong, noir, grit balls to them, you know? So super proud of Legend of the Night Owl. I edit all of the scripts.
Okay.
So it's just like because I'm editor-in-chief of the company, you know. So it's just like, but like reading through Afram script, I was just like, this is good, you know, like this is really good. So that was the Kickstarter. That's like what we were pitching for the Kickstarter, these 5 books. And then what happened was we ended up getting an opportunity through one of my friends who's a publicist for like 20 years. And he goes, I know somebody that works with Bram Stoker's like great nephew. So Bram Stoker is the writer of Dracula.
Yeah.
You know?
I love my old school horror. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
yes.
So this guy, Chris McCauley, the writer, he's done some Judge Dredd in the past and stuff like that. And he's like, he's got this thick Scottish brow, you know, it's talks like this, you know. And he's like, what if I do like a Dracula prequel comic for you guys? And I'm like, well, talk to me. So Renfield is like a hugely important character in Dracula. That's like the guy that goes to Dracula's castle before Harker, you know? So he's like, I want to tell Renfield's story. And I was like, oh, this sounds badass, you know? So it's like if you've watched Dracula, Renfield is always in the mental institution, like eating the flies and like warning Mina. And he has all of these direct interactions with Dracula and stuff like that. So he's like this really compelling character that like never got like the full on, you never learn his full backstory.
Yeah. He's a side character at best.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Chris McCauley goes to me, I want to write this character's backstory. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, I'm going to write it based off of Bram Stoker's unpublished notes. And I was like, let's do it. So he writes and it's an ash can. So it's an 8-page comic. So it's a nice, sexy little teaser, you know? But it's the full backstory for Renfield. Like it leads up to like how Dracula, the book begins, you know? So it's just like, it's really good. But when he first gave me the script, it was very European, meaning lots of panels, lots of dialogue, lots of monologue. And I love to break panels open. I like very much the Eric Powell, if you've ever read The Goon or like Chimichanga, this like very open panel. Like I like your eyes to wander when you're reading.
Oh, like full page panel, and like you just kind of flow.
Like it's all there, and
I
like
got
it's
you.
all there in like one panel flowing.
Gotcha,
You know, I hate
gotcha.
seeing lines and like the reader going, "Oh, there's one panel. Oh, there's one."
I
panel.
got you.
I like the
I
reader
got
to like
you.
kind of flow through. David Mack is very good at this. Like if you've ever read like Kabuki and like his run with
Yes.
Brian Michael Bendis on Daredevil, it's just like lots of splash pages.
Yes.
You know. So what we did was we took the 6-page script and we turned it into an 8-page script, and we just made it a lot more American.
Yeah, I was about to say immersive. Like
immersive
in that way.
and American.
Yeah.
You know, and the artist that I got for this, Steve Conjay, he did a variant cover for us of Kroom, and he was just like the perfect artist for this. So like he totally knocked this out of the park. So that ended up being the book that we announced like in the middle of the Kickstarter. Like, oh yeah, we said we were going to give you 5 books, but now we're going to give you 6. So then as the Kickstarter was ending, like probably a couple of days before, I was totally like planning our publication schedule for the year. Because I'm like the father from what's that show that used to be on NBC, the superhero show, Heroes.
Oh, okay. Here.
You remember the father? He always had a plan.
Yeah.
You know, that's me. I'm always like 3-4 steps ahead, you know. So I was like perfect. I'll give you a perfect example. Like all of my scripts, like the entire 6-issue run of Kroom, the entire 6-issue run of The Job, the next like 9 issues of Condry are already written. They're done.
I'm that guy too. I'm with you.
I have to be that way.
Yeah.
You know, so then this way I could focus on promoting like my other writers and
I agree.
Updating the website every day and stuff like that. So then I was just like, Kieran, our main artist, our rock star artist, he's getting married at the end of the year.
Oh, sweet.
So wonderful lady. Like, you know, she's an ass kicker. She's great. Like she's a huge reason why he's like with us and stuff like that. She motivates him and stuff. She's great. Hannah, she's awesome. But I'm just like, I don't want to put all of this pressure on this guy, like while he's getting married, because like he's not only doing penciling, he's doing penciling, inking, and color. You know, like so I'm like, so what if we had a Condry one shot that like explained more of his backstory, and I got a different artist to do it. And then Sarita is Condry's like sidekick. She's this amazing character. I love her. And I'm like, what if we had another one shot by another artist that told like her backstory, and they all like connect to like the first 4 issues of Condry, like very Tarantino, Pulp Fiction-esque, you know, pulling from another side, and everything comes together. So like when we finally do like the omnibus, all of this stuff will be included and it'll all flow seamlessly, you know. So we ended up getting Nick Alcorn to do the Young Condry one shot, and Nick Alcorn has been doing a ton of covers for Image the last year, and he has a great series called Ain't No Grave. He's like super big in the indie scene, especially like in the Northeast. So like we're super happy to have him. So he's doing the Young Condry one shot, and then for the Sarita one shot, we ended up getting a wonderful artist that has like never been published anywhere. His name is Joshua Adams.
Okay.
He's amazing. He's from North Carolina. When you guys see the end, like when you guys see this book, you're going to be like, why is this guy like never been published anywhere else? So it's just like, by starting this company, I've like really, I feel like the Paul Heyman of like indie comics, you know,
Nice.
like I'm finding people that like weren't given a shot somewhere else, or people that like always wanted to publish, but didn't know how, you know, and I'm opening up doors for them, and we're going to make money together, and we're going to build something special together. So that's kind of what we have going on now. We have 6 books, and we have 2 one-shots scheduled for 2022.
Sweet.
We're probably going to have more, but as of right now, that's what we got. So we're in a really good spot. So like when people ask me like what we're about, and I'm like, a lot of our books are like old school, like noir, gritty, but like we've got a superhero book, we've got that Dracula book, which is horror. So like we've got a little bit of everything. Kroom, is definitely a book that I could see like young kids get into, because there's no cursing in it or whatever, and it's very like old school sci-fi. It's a lot of fun and stuff like that, so it's a little bit more wholesome. It gets a little crazier later, but like for now it's okay. So there, and we have strong female characters in our comics. We have strong characters of all different races, ethnicities, and things like that. So, and it's just like, it's natural, it's not pandered, you know, it's organic, you know. So it's like we're trying to tell stories that people can relate to that are a lot of fun.
That is tremendous, Patrick. My goodness, I don't say it too many times on the show. I think I've maybe said it maybe 2 or 3 times in the history of my interviewing folks, of my contemporaries in the independent comic community. But I am impressed. All right, I am thoroughly impressed with what you guys are doing over there at Legacy Comics. My goodness, that is really amazing. And me, like myself, like I'm an episodic writer myself. So with your whole planning and writing them, me in my case, years in advance. And you know, and then I'm like, oh, I'm working on production, I'm working on this and all that stuff, but because I know this is taken care of, this is done. Now I can focus on other things. Now I can grab this or grab that or produce here or whatever, if I want to go to different cons, whatever. Absolutely. That's tremendous. That is tremendous. So Patrick, where can folks get all your tremendous work?
So they can go to legacycomics.com. So we were smart. After the Kickstarter was over, we updated our store and we put like 5 or 6 of the reward tiers from the Kickstarter on our shop. So just like if you want the same rewards that the people that supported us on the Kickstarter pledged, you can do that. In the next couple of weeks, our Kickstarter books are going to be finished. We're getting ready to send them to the printer. They're being lettered as we speak. Sweet. So after that, we're going to update the store, so this way all of the individual comics are represented on the store, but they're going to be on Comixology, they're going to be on Barnes & Noble, they're going to be on Amazon. We've got several stores that are going to be carrying our books too in the Northeast. We've got a whole bunch of signings set up in the Northeast, in Brooklyn and Queens and in Buffalo. Like we've got a whole bunch of, like New York, we've got at least 6 or 7 signings so far. And so if you want digital, they're going to be on Comixology, they're going to be on Barnes & Noble, Amazon. If you want print, you can go to these stores in the Northeast, or you can just simply go to legacycomics.com. You go into the shop. We've got tons of merch, like the hats, the mugs, this and that, but we've got the comics. So just go to legacycomics, COMIX.com, and you can pick up any book that you want, and you can support in any way that you want.
That is tremendous. My goodness, my goodness. I'm going to leave all that dope stuff in the description section below. My goodness, Patrick, this has been an absolute pleasure having you on the show and sharing your terrific journey, all your thousands of hats that you got on. I don't know how your head's big enough for all those hats, brother. But my goodness, I could not be more thankful for you. For taking the time to come on my show and talk about all the wonderful things you got cooking.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So, everybody, that right there is Patrick Hickey Jr., the man of 1,000 voices. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely follow him on his dope social media platforms and follow him at Legacy Comics and all the great work they're doing. It will be in the description section below. And as I always like to say on this show, him and his crew are doing the Lord's work. They are getting it done, my friend. Absolutely, absolutely. But anyway, you all have been fantastic, and you already know who I am. I'm Dre the Brute Daniels. Follow me on all my social media platforms that I'll put right under my face. Not there yet, but they'll be there. At TheBrute00 at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and if I feel like being silly, on TikTok. You all have been awesome, and I will catch you all next time. Also, if you want to support my channel, check out spinwiz.com or download the Spinwiz app and check out my comic series, Trouble. It was written with a lot of love, and it was definitely my favorite comic series to write. I've also written it in English and in Spanish, so whatever floats your boat, I got it for you. Thanks again, and check it out.